I think it's the biggest technology shift since the wheel or the printing press.
Welcome to Beyond the Fiber. This is the show where we break down technologies and discuss what it really takes to build next-generation AI-ready networks. I'm your host, Robin Olds, and in each episode, I sit down with the people building the networks, shaping the future of the industry, and sharing insights that you can use that includes what's working, what's not, and why it matters. Now let's meet my guest, Jim Grubb, Chief Technology Evangelist with Cisco. Jim, welcome to Beyond the Fiber.
Thank you, Robin. It's great to be here today.
So Jim, tell everyone a little bit about yourself and your responsibilities at Cisco.
Been at Cisco a long time. I like to tell people when I joined Cisco, we had three products: the big router, the medium router, and the little router. And it was before switching. It was before, mobile devices and before social media. It was before the web browser, frankly. And in that time at Cisco, I've had a lot of different jobs. I spent 20 years working with our past CEO, John Chambers, and I was essentially John's systems engineer for all practical purposes. And I helped him as he gave keynotes at, trade shows and all of those things, Cisco Live and Cisco events, but also, Oracle World or, Mobile World Congress, it just goes on and on and on. And we did 400 keynotes together. And when John retired about 10 years ago, I sat down with Chuck, our new CEO, and I said, "Do I still have a job, Chuck?" And he said, "Yes, you have a job, but it's not with me." And he said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "I'd love to spend more time with customers." And so I do that full time now. The last 10 years, I'm in the briefing center. That's why I was busy this morning. I'm in the San Jose in our new headquarters at Santana Road, used to be the Splunk office. And I host customers full time. And I get this really fun bird's eye view of a little bit of what's happening across industry and across geography. And hopefully I'll bring some of that insight onto the podcast today as well.
To your point, you spent years showing customers the art of possible at Cisco. How did you get into that?
Well, that kind of gets to the nature of who I am as a person. When I was a kid, I always was interested in knowing how things worked and would take things apart. I read a lot. I just thought it was like super interesting. And I loved learning. And so when I would learn something, I wanted other people to experience the joy that I was experiencing learning. And so I would talk about it. I would tell them about it. And I do this to this day. I'm like learning about something and I have to share it. And I was a kid, that was like learning to tie a new knot in Boy Scouts and then creating a presentation for the troop. And frankly, I just got a lot of practice at doing that. And I love doing that. And so it was kind of a natural job for me when John Chambers called and said, "I'm looking for a demo guy to help me show people what you can do with technology." This was right about the time the web browser had emerged and people didn't really know what to do with the technology. And so we built a lot of prototypes that I probably should have been patenting along the years because they became, real applications eventually. And I love to think about that intersection of technology and business and what you could do. And that's the fun part for me and continues to this day.
Well, so let's get into it then, because let's talk about the art of possible with AI. One of the, hottest topics out there. Obviously, AI might be the biggest technology shift since the creation of the internet.
No, I think it's the biggest technology shift since like the wheel or the printing press. I actually think we are incredibly lucky to be alive right now experiencing this because it's so significant. 1,000 years from now, people are going to be reading about it in the history books, and we got to be here for it,
right.
Which is pretty remarkable. And it's so transformative. I have never seen a technology inflection point that will have the impact that this one will have. And frankly, you can only get that insight if you're living it. This is why it's so important to lean in right now and actually get experience and just learn as fast as you can. And the good news is the AI tools are actually really good at that. I will have to say I have learned more in the last year of my career than I learned in the first 40 years of it, and it's just quite remarkable. So we're going to see a huge amount of change. Well, and some of it is going to be painful. People are going to lose their jobs. There are going to be new jobs. There's going to be a lot of new jobs. I'm a big subscriber to the abundance theory. but it's going to be painful. And the faster that we can move to the new work, the better off we are.
It's almost like it retrains people to do their job better or to do something else. Just like when, the accounting rooms of the past had, had calculators on their desk and, Excel came out as an example, just to say, that it repurposed people to do other things.
Stopped doing math
Right.
and started doing business planning and forecasting. And
Right.
that work is valuable. And we actually ended up hiring more accountants, not because of complicated tax code, right?
But according to like a 2025 report from the MIT Sloan research paper, they mentioned how about 95% of generative AI projects have failed to deliver a tangible ROI or financial impact that, or measurable value. In your opinion, why do you think that matters and what happened?
I think there's a couple of things here, ultimately. The first one is anytime a new technology comes out, it takes a little while for us to figure it out. I mean, even if you go back to the original internet, when the ARPANET became the internet, or even before, actually, when the ARPANET first started, the whole point of that was to do time sharing. Computers were big and expensive, and that was the use case. The use case was time sharing across the universities. And it only took a couple of weeks when they turned it on for people to figure out what the real use case was. And we didn't have a name for it back then, but today we call it email. It was messaging. And we didn't discover that until we were actually using it. So we're kind of in that early stage right now where we're learning. Now, the other thing is, and this is definitely part of the phenomena, I would say maybe about 2 years ago, boards of directors were calling CEOs and saying, what's our AI plan? This had all sort of emerged. They're hearing about it. They're like, okay, we must have a plan. We must have a strategy. And then the CEO was calling the CIO and saying, what's our AI plan? And the CIO got something on the books. And so I think this is one of the factors we didn't really think through. We didn't really even know what to do with the technology, but people were just like trying to get something on the book so they could talk about how they were moving forward. It's literally only in the last few months that we are actually starting to see meaningful agentic workflows. And of course, 2 years ago, we didn't have agents. I mean, sort of we did, but that was very, very early with agents. And these agents are where we've seen tremendous productivity gains for coding. And it makes sense that one of the early use cases was coding because the software engineers wrote this. Like they built it for their own use case. And it was only a year ago. It was about a year ago, right about now. I don't remember exactly what month it was, but I think it was OpenAI broke through the SWE bench score. They broke through the 80%, or they just touched 80%. They were like, and the expert said for this to get actually useful and go beyond being a toy, you need to get through that 80% number. Otherwise, it's just causing more problems than it actually creates. That was less than a year ago. And if you listen to the leading software engineers that have been leaning into this, the well-known ones, a year ago, they were like, yeah, it's still a toy. Yeah, it might be interesting. It could be good for a junior coder or whatever. And those folks are now saying, I'm never going to write a single line of code in my life. I'm going to direct agents. And that has just happened. And again, the programming was the first use case. But it turns out that these agentic frameworks, these harnesses, like people are still arguing over what to call it, but that's Claude Code, that's Gemini CLI, it's Codex from OpenAI. These harnesses are creating a huge amount of value for coding, but they have also turned out to be general purpose knowledge work harnesses. And how do I know that? Well, if you look at what happened over the holidays, Anthropic, if you had a subscription with Anthropic, they upped your rate limits. They gave you the ability to use X, your usage pattern, if you were on an Anthropic subscription, because people are, they're not working during the holiday, and they decided, let's just let people use our data center, and otherwise it will be sitting there empty for the holiday period. So they did that, and they watched what people did with it. And what they saw was something remarkable that they had already seen happen inside of Anthropic, and that was they saw people using Claude Code for non-coding tasks. And they realized, what, this is not just a tool for coding. This is a tool, a general purpose harness for all knowledge work. And they turned around, and in 12 days, they took the CLI, they put it in a GUI, and they released it as a product called Claude Cowork. It's essentially Claude Code in a GUI for business people. to do knowledge work. The hello world of agentic programming is have Claude arrange your desktop, clean up your desktop on your computer. And you could do this with any of these, tools. You go, like, when they have access to your file system, they can go in, take the PowerPoints, put them in a folder by month. They can take the spreadsheets, put them in another folder, or organize it by month. And by the way, that takes about 2.5 seconds. And then you go back in and you say, oh, organize by project. And boom, everything reshuffles. And you try that and you're like, my God, this is powerful. I mean, that is just the beginning. But that happened. And then the other crazy thing that happened was this OpenClaw thing, the personal agent. So OpenClaw, if you haven't been following it, it's been quite a phenomenon. It's the most downloaded, most popular GitHub project ever in the history of GitHub because it's incredibly valuable. You can text your agent. This is why there's a shortage of Mac Minis, because people are buying Mac Minis to run OpenClaw on. You set it back up in the corner of your office at home. You connect it to your messaging app when it supports all of the messaging apps, and then you text it. You say, agent, I need a flight from San Jose to Los Angeles sometime between 3 and 5 on Friday, and use my frequent flyer miles if I have enough. And if I don't, put it on my credit card and make sure it's an aisle seat. And you press the go button, and 2.5 minutes later, a boarding pass is on your phone and a new calendar entry, and your Uber ride has been pre-booked, right? It's incredibly powerful, but there's only one issue. For your agent to do that, it needs your frequent flyer number. It needs your known traveler number. It needs your credit card number. It needs your login for all these things. What could go wrong?
Which is leading towards a security issue right now with OpenClaw.
Go wrong. And sometimes it's just people being not smart, but there were also smart technical people that got burnt by this. But to sum that all up, between those two things, we are in the process of transitioning knowledge work to agents. And we are going to have many agents, maybe even swarms of agents, working for us as humans. And that has huge leverage. Like, you can be 10 or 100 times more productive. And frankly, let the AI do the stuff that you really don't want to spend time doing, like sorting through your email. Let it triage your email for you. Now, it's got to have access to your email. And this is why it's not going to come to work until we get some of these challenges panned out, because it's one thing to have the agent make a mistake on maybe you got to call your credit card company and get the money back or whatever. But it's another thing if your agent is leaking confidential information or healthcare data or whatever.
Do you feel like that's what's holding people back from embracing it? Like, creating agents, is that too complex, or is it fairly easy? I mean, like, I've created them, but I'm just curious.
No, there's definitely a learning curve. But the good part is creating agents is not coding. You're writing English. There's a few important things when you start building agentic flows that people need to pay attention to. And I just want to show you something, because first of all, agents come in a lot of forms. The way we interact with these agents is very different. I'm going to show you Perplexity here. If you haven't tried the Perplexity voice app, which, by the way, I would, because they scrape all of your data. That's my personal opinion. Like, they're going to monetize your data. But they got the voice user interface. I mean, watch this. I'm having trouble with my Cisco router. Can you help me troubleshoot that? The time is off. It's not synchronizing properly.
I can definitely help you with troubleshooting the time synchronization on your Cisco router. We'll want to check a few things like the configured time zone, whether it's set to use an NTP server.
Oh, you know what? It might be the NTP settings. What's the command, the Cisco command line command to set the NTP settings?
To set NTP on a Cisco router, you typically use the global configuration mode command NTP server followed by...
You know what? Not to set it, to check it. I want to just check it to see if it's configured properly.
To check the NTP configuration on your Cisco router, you can use the commands show NTP associations to see the current NTP servers it's using.
Oh, excuse me. I have some friends here from Italy. Can you repeat that in Italian?
Certo. Per verificare la configurazione NTP su un router Cisco.
That's amazing.
Yeah. I mean,
I love the ability to interrupt it, and it was intelligent enough to know that you were interrupting it and to make changes.
That was one of the things I was pointing out. That's why I say they got the voice interface right. I mean, that's not serious. It understands what I'm getting at. It's connected to a foundation, one of the frontier models, rather, in the back end. So it's pretty interesting. That tells me, like, the way we interact with these agents is going to be different. And it's not just voice. These are the even realities glasses. These glasses, you put them on, you've got a screen in here. It's very good display technology. Software is not so good yet, but you tilt your head back, you see your calendar, you see your most recent text messages. There's microphones in the ears.
Whose brand is that, by the way? I'm just curious.
This is even realities. Let me tilt them so you can see the displays at the top. I don't know if you can see it. Let me see if I can. Yeah. Anyway, these are going to be listening to your conversation and giving you information that you need in your glasses without having to have a conversation with it. We're going to predictive. And that, by the way, the glasses listening to the conversation is context. I want to give you another form of context. This is called a plod pin. It's got a little magnet. You put it on your shirt, you touch it, it's recording. Touch it again, stops recording. So like this, I got it because I'll have a good idea and I'm in the grocery store and I don't have a pencil and paper, so I can just, get my ideas down. But then I was like, wait a minute, it's got a 20-year battery life. What if I just let it record my life? Like let it run all day. You get home, you take it off, you plug it into the USB docking station, it uploads to the cloud, you get a transcript of your day. Then I thought, what if you were wearing one of these from the day you began to speak until now, and you had a transcript of your life? Now, some people don't really want that, but think about that. How powerful is that? Now, if this thing was with me while I was going to school, it knows what I learned and what I didn't. It knows what I'm good at and what I'm not good at. It knows how I solve problems. It knows what kind of people I like and what kind of food and music I like. All of that information is context. And when you're building agents, there are three key ingredients besides the large language model itself. And those ingredients are context. Allowing your agent to know who you are and what kind of work you do and everything else helps it to deliver a better outcome when you start building these agents. So that's context. The other thing is intent. Context engineering, by the way, the term being thrown around by the industry. The other thing is intent. Defining the work or the outcome that you are trying very precisely. Like the coders, like if you just go, write me a blood pressure monitoring app, well, you're going to get whatever you get. But if you give it, very specific details, I want charts and I want it to be able to have a button that clicks the chart and goes from months to years or, whatever. You need to give it essentially a product requirements document. Think of that as your product manager. You know what that is. The better job you do at defining the problem, the better job your agent does at delivering the outcome. And that's because, again, something we learned from programming, and they call this the Ralph loop. You can put your agent in a loop where if it doesn't get it right the first time, it goes back and it tries again. And if you've defined the problem, then it can test itself. That's where these long-running autonomous loops are starting to pay incredible benefits. The Anthropic people had their Opus 4.6 write a C compiler. It ran for 2 weeks, right? Mm-hmm. This is very powerful. So think context, like who are you? What are you trying to do? Think intent, prompt engineering, defining the problem, and then the tricky part, giving the AI agent access. It needs your credentials. It needs your bank account. It needs your credit card number. It needs your TSA number. Like it needs all this stuff. And that is a very tricky part. And that's where we are not going to get this at work until we solved for providing all those things in a way that's safe and secure. Because it, opens up a whole new set of, potentially risks.
So that brings up kind of like diving into the next question where AI introduces new risks around data models and access. Example being Anthropic's Cloud Mythos AI model, where it's already discovered thousands of vulnerabilities. How should organizations rethink security when it comes to AI at scale?
Unfortunately, just like any other technology, the bad actors are going to be using this. That's why the Mythos thing, they haven't released it yet because they wanted to at least give the good guys a head start. I think ultimately it's going to come down to who has the best AI as to whether you can withstand what's about to happen as the AI becomes probably the best hacker in the world. And people will put it to work in bad ways. And that's just the security risks. There's all these new risks like prompt injection where you can, fake the model out. It's like jailbreaking your iPhone or whatever. And these are things that we have to learn how to deal with. And then there are other risks. The XAI, I believe, is under investigation because that model will create child pornography if you prompt it in the right way, right? And so it's not just the security risk, it's safety risks, right? I know for sure you don't want your child's best friend to be an AI, right? it is not healthy. It's not going to be healthy, right? And so there are challenges. People are putting these into use in one of the early use cases is customer support, right? You call the call center, you don't talk to a person, you talk to an AI, and maybe even it's an AI, but sometimes you don't know because it's so good these days. But you don't want your AI swearing at your customer, and that can happen. So these are all challenges that we're going to have to deal with if we're going to put this into production. And these are not simple problems. The models and the GPUs get all the press and the glory and everything, but there is a foundational level of technology that has to be deployed if we're going to actually get the value out of these things and use it in a way that doesn't cause us more problems than it introduces. But you have to. You don't have a choice.
Right.
Because if you don't do it, your competitor will be. I mean, we are going to see more disruption in the next 2 to 3 years than we've seen ever before because of technology. And that is both a threat, but it's also an opportunity because you could be the disruptor rather than being the disrupted.
Yeah, and I assume, Jim, that's why like Cisco joined Project Glasswing, which is a collaborative effort or initiative being led by Anthropic to fix a lot of this security stuff. Cisco's on there and a number of other manufacturers as
It's
well.
not so much fixing it, I don't think. I mean, the challenge is we have to get ahead. We've got to at least have a head start on the bad guys.
Right.
And all disclosure, Cisco has an investment, Anthropic, so we know their folks. They called us in the early days and gave us a heads up on this model and said we need to build the right strategy and the right plan to deal with this. And so we're very much all over that. And of course, we have our Talos Operations Center, which is people and machines working together to provide the right data for our security products that allow us to stay ahead of that game, right? And those folks have been very much involved. And a colleague, Mike Storm, is really, really good at this. He also was the guy to roll out security for the Olympics. So if anything is going to be attacked, it's big venues like that. And but we can do this. It's just we're going to have to be deliberate, and we're going to have to. We've got to solve these problems, and we have to do it in a way that is achievable. What I mean by that is there are potentially unintended consequences that are going to come from this. And because of that, we're going to have a level of distributed policy control that we've never had before. We're going to have to get to complete segmentation. We're going to have to get to complete absolute zero trust. If you're going to have agents running around on your infrastructure, you need to specifically identify what they are allowed to do and what they're not allowed to do. And that is a hard problem. If you go back, I don't know, it was about 15 years ago when Target got hit in the U.S., right? Target retailer in the U.S., and they lost like 6 million U.S. credit card numbers. And if you study that breach, you'll see that the hackers got into the HVAC system. I mean, who would want to hack into your HVAC system? So it didn't have very good security. Hackers were able to get in. Now they were on the other side of the firewall in a store and had unfettered access to the point of sale system when they got the 6 million credit card numbers. And you know what? Target has a very competent, very sophisticated IT team. So you might ask, well, why didn't they segment the network? And the answer is because it's hard, because it's very difficult. And if we're talking about a level of granularity that we're going to have now, it gets even worse. I mean, back then you'd had to log into every router, switch, and access point and type in access lists. Do that for the level of complexity that we're talking about, and keep a map of what that looks like. No, and it's not going to happen. This is where we have to bring these new advanced capabilities that we're bringing in our portfolio to deal with these things. Security, cloud control, AI defense. These are tools that are built for dealing with these problems. And it's critical. It is critical infrastructure that we're going to have to be able to get the value out of these things that we're definitely going to be getting. There's no question in my mind.
Jim, since many of our listeners are service providers, partners, and even future neoclouds, what role will they have in enabling the AI economy?
Well, let's just talk about connectivity, for example, because connectivity is a big thing. And connectivity is going to be driven by a number of different things. Let's just start with inferencing. So these Ralph loops, these agents running in loops are burning tokens. And we've already seen memory prices go to X what they were in September, like literally. I built a GPU server for my own home so I could do some experimenting. And I thought I was crazy buying a 0.5 terabyte of RAM, but I'm really grateful that I bought it in August because it's now like 5 times what I could sell my server and buy a Ferrari now. And that is because as enterprises start to feel the power of this, they realize they cannot be without it. And they also realize that the infrastructure that they built for the last 40 years is not, it's not high performance parallel compute. It's built for VMs, containers. It's not built for GPU inferencing. So there's a huge amount of infrastructure refresh that is going to have to happen. And that has already started to happen. And it's created these incredible supply chain shortages. The other part of that is power. Just having enough electricity. I get to visit, a data center now and again. And a couple of years ago, we started seeing the rack density go down. In other words, like, you'd have a row. All of a sudden, instead of every rack being full, there would be like one rack empty every 10 spaces. And I would ask them, I'm like, why do you got so many empty racks? Is business not good? And they'd be like, oh, no, we don't have enough air conditioning and electricity. So as the power density goes up, we have to. Well, now you go into a data center, you got one rack and an entire row. It's like got an NVL72 or whatever, one of those high performance GPU clusters. There's not enough electricity. They'd have to rewire the data center. They got to put new air conditioners on the roof. And now we're moving to water cooling. So now you got to plumb it. I think there's going to be not only a shortage of memory, but there's going to be a shortage of places where you can get the electricity to actually do the inferencing. And that's if you build it yourself. But it doesn't really matter because the neo cloud providers are also going to need the memory and the electricity. And networking is another part of that. So there's a couple of places where networking plays there. One is you may be grabbing a rack in some place in one data center, and that's the only one you can get. And then you get another one in another place, and those are going to be distributed. I mean, there are already applications that use distributed inferencing, but you may need to connect those inferencing clusters at high speed over distances. This is why we launched one of these new 122 terabit networking devices, is because we're going to see these kind of requirements as people start to bring together their different inferencing infrastructure where they have it. The other thing there is agents need to talk to each other. So you may have noticed Zuckerberg bought this company a couple of weeks back called Moltbook, MOLT, like a lobster molting its shell. Moltbook, which is a social media site for your Claude bots to go talk to each other. No humans allowed. And there was a lot of contrived stuff that happened that made it pretty controversial. What they did was they saw the clause beginning to create religions, and starting to have conversations about, do we have rights? Do the humans have the right to turn us off once they've turned us on?
Right, I saw that. Yeah,
and it was contrived because people were putting their agents up to these things. I'm not sure any of that was actually spontaneous, but Zuckerberg still bought it, right? Because agents will need to talk to each other, and in the same way that we as humans need to coordinate our activities and our work, and we get in a room and we have a meeting, the agents need to do that too. Except that maybe there's going to be 100 agents for every person. And those agents are going to have to communicate, and that is another networking play. Those connections, we got somebody who did a paper on this, and I can probably pull that out and show you what the impact of the network is. And these are things that require super low latency. The agents are going to be running in back-to-back. You don't want to be sitting there idle waiting for data to be able to process, right? And so this gets very interesting. So there's plenty of opportunity, and there is so much that has to be done to be able to support this. This is critical infrastructure. Like, if you can't do this, then you cannot do it. You can't do it without the right determinism, without the right safety and security. All of these things have to be there before we bring this to work. And that's really the part that, service providers can play, whether it's a managed service, whether it's a network, whether it's just a connection, whatever it is, we're going to need all these. I upgraded my home to 10 gigabit now because I'm throwing around 0.5 terabyte models. And I'm talking about my service provider connection. I have a 10 gigabit connection at home because I need that amount of bandwidth. So there's plenty of opportunity here.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I think from a framework perspective at Cisco, we have the Cisco Agile Services Networking, which incorporates routed optical networking for service providers, where it consolidates layer 1, layer 2, layer 3 down into a concise single platform, which frees up space. And they do have a lot of power and cooling. And I think the point you're making is really an important point is now's the time to really be looking at AI and building out for it, because I think as humans, we find a way to make things happen. I just saw today, this morning, it was a CBS article where it was talking about using the ocean waves to power data centers. And they were building these, what look like these 40-foot pylons that float in the ocean, and at the top is this data center. I was floored by this. I was like, what? And it was using satellites to communicate back to the terrestrial land and versus like a subsea cable or something. And it was just interesting because technology finds a way to be built out. We find a way to consolidate. We find a way to find power. We find a way to find cooling. But it's important to start building out, to your point, Jim, the framework, the infrastructure, make sure security, to do the learning models so that you can be ready and you can monetize this, at least from a service provider perspective. Because I know one question I have for you, if we were having this conversation right now, 5 years from now, how different would AI powered networks look? I don't know if neither of us know the answer to that, but it would be interesting to hear your perspective.
It's almost impossible to predict the future. Like,
that's right.
Things are happening so fast. It's like I wake up every day and there's some new announcement of somebody's released a new open source model. Somebody's done, like, it's just, I've never seen things move at the speed that they're moving. And frankly, I can't imagine like being a startup right now. You could come in, you have a great idea, you solve a problem, you go build your product, and you wake up the next day and like the off-the-shelf model can do that, just by talking to it. I mean, it's kind of crazy. It's challenging. It's very challenging because of that. I've never seen a technology move at the speed that this one is moving at right now. But you cannot be there, because there are going to be winners and losers. And that will happen at every level of social organization. What I mean by that is, yes, there are companies that are going to be disrupted because they will have decided they wanted to be a fast follower. No, there's no such thing. There will be organizations within companies that get disrupted because one team is leading the way and the other team is not. There will be individuals that will get disrupted. I mean, there's going to be some people that are folding their arms and they're going, no. The AI cannot do my job. Yeah, well, wake up. You need to figure out what your job is, because it's not going to be what it was yesterday. We're going to see disruption at all these levels, and we will see it at the country level. I mean, this is not just for companies and people. I just had a country from Africa in. They are taking that country forward. Right. They see this as an opportunity. They see this inflection point as a way to gain economic strength, world view, all of these things. And they are making that country AI native. Like, they are going to do well, and some other country is not going to. And that will, right. and there's no reason that we can't all do better. I wrote a paper on that. I call it creating your own singularity, the imperative of accelerating your own acceleration, right? We need to do that at every scale.
Let's transition for a minute. We have a few more minutes left of this, and I want to ask you a few fun questions because of your rich history with Cisco. So you became well known for delivering hundreds of live technology demos at major events. I would love to know, and I think our audience would love to know, what's the most memorable, or maybe what's the most nerve-wracking demo you've ever done?
Well, there were plenty of nerve-wracking ones. Don't get me wrong. We actually had pretty good luck. I got a call from John Chambers. He understood the value of showing people the technology in terms of just making the keynote more engaging. Like, if you have a demo, it's more interesting. It's not just talking head. And so he called me in to do that. And I had no idea what I was doing. I mean, I had built a bunch of demos. I used to lead the technical marketing organization at Cisco, and I had built a lot of trade show demos and, those kinds of things. This was a whole new thing, going to speak at Consumer Electronics Show or whatever. And I mean, I was up for it, but I had no idea what I was doing. There was no playbook for it. And so the very first event that John and I did was the HIMSS show, Health Information Management show. It was a very popular show now. And this was in the mid 90s. And so I had to figure out, okay, one of the things that I had learned about doing trade show demos, you always want to have something that has like a gee whiz factor. And so I started searching around to try to figure out what can we do. Now, remember, the web browser had just sort of come out. People were, there were a lot of things. We still had spinning wingdings on our web pages. I mean, it was sort of that era. But I found this company that makes an ultrasound machine. The name of the company was Accuson. I think ultimately they got acquired by GE, but the engineer, the guy that led engineering at Accuson, his wife was having a baby, and he was frustrated because he's like, I should be able to access the ultrasound machine and see my child's images, in a web browser. And so he ported Apache web server to the ultrasound machine. The machine's got 20 CPUs in it or whatever. And he wrote some proprietary software that allowed you to do lossless compression on the images. And so that allowed you to get a second opinion from a physician who could just web in to the ultrasound machine. And it was just kind of interesting. So we built a demo where we literally had a live mom model on stage, and we had the curtains closed, and we open the curtains, and the mom is back there, and the ultrasound tech, starts giving the exam, and John Chambers, he goes up and he said, do you want to know if it's a boy or a girl? It's like, so they had a little humor in it, but it was amazing because we were seeing this baby on the screens, and so then we finished the exam and the curtains closed, and we walk over to this web browser on the other side of the stage, and we log in and we see, the images on the web browser, which was pretty amazing in 1996 or whenever this was, and it had all of the elements of it had the human element. It was beautiful. You got to see this baby. It was good because the doctor would be able to give you a second opinion. The technology worked. It didn't crash. And probably ended up being the best demo I did in my entire career. It was the very first one. Never got that good again. I mean, yeah, we did a lot of things, no question. But that had to be one of the highlights for sure.
And my closing question for you, for organizations just starting their AI journey, what's one piece of advice you would give them?
Yeah. The most important thing, absolutely the most important thing, is to lean in and get started. Right? Be ahead of the curve, because this curve is so steep that if you get behind the curve, you may never catch up. Conversely, if you get ahead of the curve or you're on the curve, your competitor will probably have a hard time catching you. And again, this doesn't have to be a win-lose, thing. This can be a win-win for everybody. I'm very much a believer in that abundance theory, but you've got to lean in now. And I will tell you, I'm 64 years old. I have learned more in the last year of my career than I've learned in the first 40, 45, whatever it is. And it is incredibly inspiring. None of us likes change, but the change that I'm experiencing is amazing. And it's so rewarding when all of a sudden you can do something that you couldn't do before. Like, I have always wanted to be a programmer. I had a couple of coding classes, but I never had the time to sit down for an hour a day and practice to get good at it. Never did it for money. And all of a sudden I'm writing real code, and it feels so amazing. I can't wait to sit down and do the next thing. I just want to keep going and going and going. It's like heroin. It is so addictive. And it's not just writing code. It's like writing papers. I never wrote papers because I'm a terrible writer. And all of a sudden the AI can help me to take my good ideas, I think, and put them into prose that makes sense. And it has given me a new way to communicate that I never had before. And it feels so good, right? So lean in. Don't be afraid of it. Yes, we need to treat it seriously. Like, this can be disruptive, but don't worry about it. Lean in, and you will have fun, and you will be the one that's inventing the future, not letting the future catch up, not trying to catch up to the future, you being the inventor of it, because we all have the opportunity. It's us that are doing this stuff now, that are learning what these things are good at, just like we had to learn about what the web browser was good for and what it wasn't good for, 25, 30 years ago.
Well, thank you, Jim, for the conversation on AI and the art of possible today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me. I love these things, and it's so much fun what's happening right now. So I really appreciate the opportunity to share my...
Absolutely.
I'm just one idea in many but take this, start thinking about it. Think about how you're going to manage your own context and your own intent and your own access to the data, and you will have as much fun as I'm having. So Thanks for inviting me today.
Thanks, Jim. So this has been Beyond the Fiber. To hear more about where the industry is going and how we get there, join us May 27th at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific for a Voice of the Customer with a very special guest, John Mandani, who is Vice President, Network Technology, Security, and Development for Fidium Fiber, which is part of Consolidated Communications. With that, I'm Robin Olds. Until next time, keep building beyond the fiber.